Penguin Random House Audio presents Tools to Save Our Home Planet, a Changemaker's Guidebook, edited by Nick Mucha, Jessica Flint, and Patrick Thomas. Read for you by Peter Ganem and Karen Murray.
Forward. Why a Tools Conference? Yvon Chouinard, founder of Patagonia. Over the years, I've been influenced by many nature writers like Henry David Thoreau, Rachel Carson, and Edward Abbey. I pretty much got to know what the problems were, but it was lost on me what I, as one person, could do to fix them. The first time I came to realize the power of an individual to effect major change was in the early 70s. A group of us went to our local theater to watch a surf movie. At the end, a young surfer asked the audience to attend a city council meeting to speak out against the city's plan to channel and develop the mouth of the Ventura River, one of the best surf points in the area and only 500 yards from Patagonia's office. Several of us went to the meeting to protest the possible disruption of our surf break. We knew vaguely that the Ventura River had once been a major spawning creek for steelhead and Chinook salmon. In fact, in the 1940s, the river had an annual run of 4,000 to 5,000 sea-run rainbows. Then 2 dams were built, and the water was diverted, killing the fish run and causing the bars at the mouth of the river to be starved of sand. Except for winter rains, the only water left in the river flowed from the one-stage sewage treatment plant. At the city council meeting, several city-paid experts testified that the river was dead and that channeling would have no effect on the birds and other wildlife at the estuary or on the surf break. Then, Mark Capelli, a young graduate student, gave a slideshow of photos he had taken along the river, of the birds that lived in the willows and the muskrats, water snakes, and eels that spawned in the estuary. When he showed the slides of steelhead smolt, everyone stood up and cheered. Yes, several dozen steelhead still came to spawn in our dead river. The development plan was defeated. We gave Mark office space, a mailbox, and small contributions to help fight for the river. As more development plans cropped up, the Friends of the Ventura River worked to defeat them and to clean up the water and increase its flow. A second stage was added to the sewage plant, and then a third. Wildlife increased, and a few more steelhead began to spawn. Mark taught us 3 important lessons. 1. Grassroots efforts can make a difference. 2. Degraded habitat can, with effort, be restored. 3. The grassroots movement needs sustained and deep support to prevail. Inspired by his work, we began to make regular donations to small groups working to save or restore natural habitat, rather than give the money to large, non-governmental organizations with big staff and overhead and corporate connections. I didn't have the courage to be on the front lines, but I'd learned the power of activism, and I wanted to support it. We held our first Tools Conference in 1994 at Chico Hot Springs, Montana. We knew we'd hit pay dirt when the local newspaper ran a front-page story about how we greenies asked the hotel we were staying in not to change the sheets every day to save water, a revolutionary idea at the time. While I am often embarrassed to admit to being a businessman, I've been known to call them sleazeballs. I realize that many activists could benefit from the skills that business people possess. When I told that first group of activists that they were business people, there was some snickering. They all thought business was the enemy. I told them that their organizations had budgets and expenses, had to summon leadership during crises, had to be creative and innovative or die. They had all the problems of business. I thought I would bring leaders from the organizations we fund through our grant-making programs together with world-class trainers and thought leaders to help advance their work. Now, almost 30 years later, the Tools Conference has really come into its own. Every 2 years, we gather 100 activists at Stanford Sierra Camp on Fallen Leaf Lake near South Lake Tahoe and let them build community together, share best practices, and interact with some of the best trainers on a wide spectrum of topics, from grassroots organizing, lobbying, planning strategy and communications, to being more inclusive organizers and organizational leaders, shifting power in their communities, fundraising, and working with business. While our trainers consistently lead incredible sessions, some of the greatest wisdom and insight comes from the participants themselves. We now have over 50 years' experience supporting the grassroots environmental movement, and while we are proud of how far we've come as a funder, collaborator, and co-conspirator for these scrappy and focused organizations, we understand that the world has changed in untold ways since we started this journey. As business educator and coach Marshall Goldsmith said, "What got you here won't get you there." We know that the strategies and leaders that got us to this point are not the ones who will lead us through our current, unfolding crises. Heck, that goes for me too. The world we now occupy thinks, acts, and looks vastly different than it did 40, 20, or even 10 years ago. The pace of change is so dizzying. How could we expect to use the same playbook to solve the problems of tomorrow? We need to double down on the successful strategies of the past while also building in new approaches. We also know that this is hard and often thankless work. If you've picked up this audiobook, you are already motivated and inspired to effect change. That's great, but it isn't nearly enough. The crises before us demand that we take this work dead seriously. The contributors to this audiobook are working tirelessly for a wide variety of causes, from banning open-net pen fish farms to protecting our right to vote. They are successful because they do the work, day in and day out, that needs to be done, like any business. They write and rewrite vision and mission statements, create campaigns, raise funds, and take legal action. They celebrate their successes and recalibrate after a setback. They keep at it day after day, knowing that one day they will succeed. Maybe not how they originally envisioned, but in some way. In these essays and case studies, you'll find the best practices and tricks of the trade from those on the front lines, fighting for the planet and for thriving communities. Learning from and being inspired by them is the best way I know to gain momentum in this fight for our lives. Thank you, and good luck. Introduction. Dude, fuck this, I'm done. Nick Mucha, Patagonia Environmental Capacity Building Director. Forgive the language, but this title captures what I was feeling and saying on repeat back in 2019 before I joined Patagonia. I had spent the better part of 20 years in the grassroots nonprofit space, focused on a variety of issues and approaches to impact. Being way more of a heart guy than a head guy, I poured myself into the work, always believing that, despite the meager pay, ramshackle offices, long hours, constant travel, and limited upward mobility, this was my life's work. My personal journey started in 2002, when I was living in rural Honduras as a Peace Corps volunteer, facilitating community-led development projects. During that time, I founded my own international NGO in Nicaragua, then ran that organization for 7 years. I subsequently worked with several high-impact organizations closer to home in California, typically focused on leading the programmatic or organizing functions. My last position was a veritable dream job. As the director of programs for
Sample complete. Ready to continue?